Berserk is one of my favourite things to exist, and in this video I will be listing off my personal top 10 moments within the manga. For this list I've purposely excluded all fight/battles as I have already ranked those in another video and try to aim more on the philosophical moments such as impactful speeches and examples of character development that stand out. Whilst this is my top 10, not all the moments are specific to their given number and can be interchangeable depending on my mood. With all that being said, I hope you enjoy and let's begin. To begin with, the birth of the Black Swordsman occurs after Guts realises he stands a chance against the demons by absolutely demolishing one who found him with his Dragon Slayer, which was a spectacle of its own. However, I was more hyped up by the commentary of Guts and the narration of the background as he begins to embark on his new journey. Dragons are dragons because humans can't beat them. So, what's a man who beats dragons? This line gives me shivers from time to time as Guts is presented as this beast who bests even monsters, and it's always reminded me of the Kanye "what's a god to a non-believer" quote that always reminds me of Guts, someone who defies the natural order through his own belief driving him forwards. The moment comes at the end of the flashback during the Golden Age, and I was beyond ready for Guts to start messing Apostles up, with the shock of the eclipse still very present, and at the time I believed he still had a chance to kill Griffith. The final two panels are probably my favourite from the moment, with Guts tapping into that dismal rage to fuel himself in the dark void of his future portrayed through the black wisps of the unknown in which he steps to. An alternative viewpoint, however, could be seen as Guts running from his problems and responsibility to protect Casca, something he would indeed grow to regret as he regresses to his solitude due to the broken feelings he has, masking his pain as a mission to fight as a form of coping with what has happened. Next is Guts' acceptance of his new companions in Isidro, Farnese, Serpico and Shirke during their stay on a beach in a cabin. Guts has always struggled to let others share his burden, but as he reflects upon the new sense of community that the group possesses, he is truly thankful for their efforts, and his connections with them have grown naturally to the point where he entrusts them with his life. The widespread panel of Casca running through the waves makes her seem genuinely happy, and even if she cannot be her old self, at least her current self is not suffering, which is a relief to see for both the audience and Guts. Farnese's request to learn magic from Shirke is also a massive moment as it shows off the development of Farnese's character from being a devout religious masochist into becoming someone who values her comrades and wants to become more open-minded to the world, and I think she is a fantastic character and definitely goes through some of the most change during the story. The final part occurs during the night and we see how Shirke is overwhelmed by her grief and reaches out for Guts for emotional support, and the moment is truly wholesome and shows how Guts' own experiences have allowed him to provide this support to a girl who is really just a child thrown into the adult life just as Guts was. Shirke's crush on Guts also seems to formulate around here, and I can't blame her, to be fair. Overall, the two scenes on the beach is a peaceful break and shows how close the new crew have gotten, with a real sense of family forming, and we as readers appreciate these moments further as we know we can no longer take them for granted. I was debating for a considerable amount of time whether to use the Hill of Swords meeting or the rebirth of Griffith, but decided to use the Hill of Swords as it has both spectacle and development, whereas the rebirth is purely majestic spectacle, and whilst it is still amazing, it's harder to talk about. The way Griffith appears so nonchalantly into the scene is so eerie, revealed to us by Guts and an innocent Erica, and instantly Guts sprints towards his eternal enemy with purely the intent to kill. As Griffith speaks, we can truly see how detached he has become from emotional binds, speaking in a calm way with no regrets of his past, something that infuriates Guts further, and we can really feel the coldness of Griffith through both his words and facial expressions, devoid of humanity. Griffith saying the Hawks have been assembled once more is especially raw, which implies a somewhat mocking tone as he stands so carelessly on the cost for his ambition, and his proclamation that he is free from all feelings he considers burdens. Griffith appears to us even more monstrous, completely devoted to his dream. The fight is decent, but I am not discussing that as it isn't as important. What is, however, is the fact that Griffith's new flesh is infused with the demon child of Guts and Casca in a really messed up way, considering it became a demon as a result of Femto's graping of Casca, and now the two are inherently linked together through the presence of the child within Griffith. Guts' failure to reach and kill Griffith for another time and Puck's wise words makes him finally accept protecting Casca should be his #1 priority and to give up the chase of Griffith. Overall, it is an emotionally challenging moment for Guts, and all his anger is rendered futile as he cannot reach Griffith, and Griffith himself feels no remorse at all for his brutal sacrifice of the Hawks, claiming Guts should know he has always been this way. Whilst many of the selected moments involve serious character development or deep conversations, this moment is purely due to the spectacle, and it's the merging of the astral and physical worlds after the defeat of Ganishka. Miura obviously is recognised as one of the greatest modern artists, and this is clearly shown through the progressive improvement of Berserk, and one of my favourite exhibits of Miura's ability comes from the astral world merging into the mortal world. The art is so mind-blowingly amazing throughout this arc. Every character, every location, and the impact of the wave of astral energy feels so real and authentic, and Miura was truly at the peak of his powers. Specific highlights for me include Skull Knight appearing behind Femto, Guts being hit by the wave, and the first look upon Falconia, and the many depictions of classic fantasy creatures. The entire sequence is truly astonishing, and Griffith's reality is finally realised to a final degree, with the tonal shift never being more clear. Next is the Campfire of Dreams chapter, which is a beautifully drawn and philosophically introspective account on the way that Guts believes he is leading his life and the influences of Griffith to the loyal Band of the Hawks. Whilst Guts believes his destiny will lead him away from the Band of the Hawk eventually, the warmth of companionship he is receiving is something he values highly, as the sense of community is a new experience for him, being brought up on the battlefield with an abusive father. The metaphor of the Campfire of Dreams being an amassing of the flames of others contributing to a greater purpose is also very cleverly explored, with Griffith being a central point as some sort of prophet figure, and the setting and the vibe of the conversation is so peaceful and truly one of the peaks for enjoyment in the Golden Age. Not only this, but it also highlights the progressive relationship between Guts and Casca, as Casca has finally begun to see whilst fighting may be natural to Guts, he also has a very attentive and compassionate side where he truly cares for his comrades such as Gaston and Nicole. And whilst brief, the conversation has always stood out for me within Berserk as one of deep reflection and the power of dreams as a collective force for change, and how humans have a tendency to gravitate towards figures who can really make a difference. The next moment that truly stands out as one of the best is Guts and Jill's final conversation about the reality of the cruel world they live in, and Jill's newfound resolve as a result. The Lost Children chapter is an allegory about the troubles of growing up, especially with an abusive family, and Jill is a child who wants to escape from the life she feels trapped within. However, once she sees the true hell that Guts must endure on a daily basis, it allows her to find a sense of optimism in her living situation. Even if it seems hopeless or painful currently, things can change and you have to be willing to endure to overcome. Whilst initially it may seem like Guts is portraying a futile perspective on life with his "there is no paradise for you to escape to" line, in reality Guts is attempting to make Jill realise that to fight is the only way, and this reflects upon Jill, who commits to fighting her battles head on instead of running away from them. I also love Guts' growth as a character too. Considering he told Theresia to kill herself as an escape, he not only protects but encourages Jill to keep going, and whilst it's still kind of cold, a small step in the right direction is still progress. Their conversation and the arc overall is a message from Miura that we must face our struggles in order to vanquish them, something that Guts embodies, and so now does Jill, and I wouldn't mind seeing her character again in the future with her changed outlook on life, however it is unlikely. Up next is one of the most alpha moves within the entire story, and it's Rickett laying into Griffith with a slap that shocked the kingdom. Rickett is a character who has grown from an innocent and helpless child to an independent inventor who protects those around him with his mature pragmatism, mainly for Erica, but also Casca and Godo for a time too. After Guts explained the dark truth to Rickett about the events of the eclipse, Rickett is shocked by his once idolized leader's actions. However, as Guts mentioned, he could never truly hate him. That being said, Rickett embarks upon a journey that ends with him arriving at the newly founded Falconia to finally answer Griffith's offer to rejoin his forces, and Rickett achieves his closure by slapping Griffith with no fear of consequences at all. The slap was so epic to see, as it was satisfying and humbled Griffith whilst pissing off his entire entourage in a moment that made time stop in anticipation for Griffith's reaction. Ultimately, it shows the development of Rickett, who I never particularly cared much for in the Golden Age due to the swell of other likeable characters in the cast. However, his importance has greatly increased since, and I hope he eventually ends up linking with Guts and the crew once more. I'm sure he could give some pointers on how to actually touch Griffith, cause yeah, Guts really needs that. Up next is Griffith's counter to the assassination attempt, and whilst this event can be considered a conflict, it isn't a classical fight and more of a tactical masterclass from Griffith that really exhibits his intelligence both politically and strategically, and also hints at the icy coldness that dwells within him. Prior to the attempt, the moment of glory is a triumphant and deserved moment for the Hawks, with their ascension into the ranks of the nobility seeming complete, and we feel genuine admiration for Griffith, Guts and the rest's effort so far. Casca and Guts share a wholesome moment that involves commentary on a woman's expected role in society, and progresses their friendship to a closer level, connecting on the fact they both feel out of place in this setting, escaping to the shared comfort outside. Griffith predicting it all was a decent twist, and his return was spectacular. The fire and the deaths of the conspirators is drawn gruesomely well, with Griffith staring the Queen down through the flames with cold victory painted upon his face, and his lines about no spectator seats in the battlefield and they are the defeated who die is such juicy and satisfying writing that shows how serious Griffith's resolve truly is, and the entire event is the definition of spinning the block on the nobility who oppose him. His complete and utter domination of Foss was also a sign of his darker manipulative side, and the implication of Griffith being an unstoppable force is solidified. His question to Guts about being cruel was also a humanizing moment, as it seems as if Griffith's conflicting morals kept tugging at him throughout his humanity, something of course he would lose eventually, but in the moment makes the audience keep a nuanced opinion on Griffith as a character. Guts and Casca finally getting together has to be one of the most iconic and perfectly crafted progressions of character development within manga in general for me, and so much is outlaid between the two that creates such an unbreakable bond. My favourite part of this climax between the newfound lovers has to be the sense of vulnerability that is presented by both. Berserk is a manga that deals strongly with themes of trauma and recovery, and we see how Guts is still possessed by the haunting nature of his past in terms of what he did to Gambino despite not being his fault. This really humanizes Guts to another degree and goes to explore how whilst people can show a powerfully strong side, they may have constant battles within their mind that acts as a plague to their mental well-being, and a connection as strong as the one he achieves with Casca allows him to bring these traumas to the surface in a very emotionally charged scene where her acceptance of his wounds allows him to heal through sharing the burden. Guts' thoughts on how the blade has become so attached to himself that his life exists purely for him to fight is also interesting, as it shows that Guts is content with no final destination, no end goal such as Griffith had, but a never-ending purpose instead, such as Zod with a lust for battle, which could also be a form of tragic irony, as Guts is destined to fight till he dies now, as he is a sacrifice and there's simply no choice any longer. Overall, the moment is a deep look into the psychological torment a person can have, and Miura may be suggesting that by sharing with people who you care for, the pain can become tolerable and even allow you to heal and progress. Casca and Guts' relationship matures so organically, and whilst the gruesome events are yet to follow, this moment of bonding is still an escape into the beauty of human nature. Finally, one of, if not my favourite Berserk moment is Casca being brought back. Casca is such an important character throughout the manga, and many of Guts' painful endeavours pivot on protecting her, and prior to her mental collapse she was a strong warrior who was complexly linked to Guts, Griffith and the others. The distant memory of a Casca such as this lingered tentatively within the manga, and the journey to keep her safe but also restoring her previous ferocity became a reality, with Puck bringing up Elfhelm and the heavier use of magic within the story. Not only is trauma represented in a tragically beautiful manner within Casca's subconscious, being a broken doll, which symbolises not only her fragmented personality but also how she felt like a useless toy to be handled without care, relating most likely to the many times she suffered sexual assaults, and could be a comment on the objectification of women within patriarchal societies, and her awakening after being restored brought genuine tears to my eyes, as her life was so clearly returned to a degree of sanity. Of course, all of the horror that would soon follow, such as the mental barrier between her and Guts, and being kidnapped by Griffith, do bring down the moment slightly whilst looking at the full picture of Berserk. However, the initial elation of her return was so moving and beautifully drawn that I reread it many times. One emphasis I had was on her eyes, which were especially captivating, and for me this has to be considered as one of the most amazing, satisfying Berserk moments within the story. So that's my top 10. Hope you enjoyed. It was a bit of a longer video, but yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. Bye.